Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Let me tell you a story, one that begins with a contract, but ends with something real. Lucas Bennett was the kind of man who could silence an entire room just by walking in. With neatly trimmed dark brown hair, cold eyes, and a tall figure draped in tailored designer suits, he was the picture of a successful tech founder in New York. At 31, Lucas wasn't just the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar AI startup. He was a symbol of discipline and pure logic. But beneath that perfect exterior was a heart that no longer believed in love. Lucas had watched his father, a renowned venture capitalist, abandon his mother for a younger woman. At just 12 years old, young Lucas had seen his mother, Evelyn Bennett, a strong woman who always kept her emotions locked away, break down in silence. From that day forward, Lucas learned that love was nothing more than a beautiful illusion. He grew up believing that marriage was simply a contract, a strategic arrangement, rather than an emotional bond. Evelyn, now a powerful investor herself, had never given up hope that her son might change. She believed Lucas deserved a real home, a real family, not just board meetings and spreadsheets. After years of failed persuasion, Evelyn finally gave him an ultimatum. If you don't get married within a year, I'll transfer the company to someone else. For the first time, Lucas felt cornered, not because of the money. He had more than enough to live comfortably forever, but because of principle. He would not let anyone, not even his mother, dictate his life. The question was, how could he make her believe he would marry without actually doing it? Lucas needed a woman, not a lover, a contract wife. Someone who could play the role well enough to fool his mother. A plan began to take shape. Cold, calculated, and perfectly aligned with who he was. And then fate brought Emma Carter into his life, a simple girl with a warm smile and defiant eyes, the complete opposite of the cold world he lived in. Emma Carter never imagined a morning cup of coffee would change her entire life. It was a cold winter morning in Brooklyn. The small cafe where she worked was nearly packed, the rich scent of espresso blending with soft jazz playing in the background. Wearing a faded brown apron, Emma rushed from counter to table, moving quickly but never without her gentle smile. At 26, Emma once had a simple dream, to become a writer. But after a tragic accident took both her parents, she was forced to leave college, shoulder the debts, and survive on her own. Now, she worked morning shifts at the cafe, evening hours at a secondhand bookstore, and wrote in the dead of night when the city fell asleep. That morning, a man stepped into the cafe. Emma's gaze brushed past him, then did a double take. He stood tall in a long black coat, his eyes sharp and cold, as if he'd just walked out of a tense meeting. "Good morning, what can I get you?" she asked politely. "Black, no sugar," the man replied, his voice low and firm. A minute later, he returned with a look of mild annoyance. "What is this?" "Your coffee," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I said no sugar." "And I didn't add any," Emma replied, arms crossed. "I made it myself. Taste it." The man stared at her for a moment, then took a slow sip. After a brief pause, he gave a slight nod. An unspoken admission she was right. This girl was different, unshaken, unimpressed, completely unfazed by the $1,000 watch on his wrist. Lucas Bennett left the cafe that day with a strange thought. She might be the one he needs. That evening, as Emma was cleaning up after her shift, a sleek luxury car pulled up in front of the cafe. She froze when the same man stepped out, still in his crisp suit. His eyes locked onto hers with quiet determination. "I have a proposal for you," he said. Emma crossed her arms. "If it's about coffee, I stop serving after 7. It's not about coffee. I want you to pretend to be my wife." Emma blinked. "Excuse me?" "A contract, 1 year. You'll be well compensated. I need my mother to believe I'm married." Emma let out a disbelieving laugh. "Do I really look like a bad actress to you?" "No," Lucas replied, voice steady. "I think you're someone who needs money. And I'm someone who needs a good performance." And right then, on a cold winter night under the dim yellow lights of a tiny cafe, their lives began to change. 1 week after signing the contract, Emma moved into Lucas's penthouse. a sleek, modern space perched atop a high-rise in Manhattan. The apartment had high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling glass windows, and a minimalist interior straight out of a design magazine. Everything was perfectly arranged. Too perfect. Emma stood in the living room, backpack slung over her shoulder, glancing around uncertainly. There wasn't a single photo, book, or sign of life. It was beautiful, but cold. Lucas approached, pointing down the hallway. "Your room is at the end. We'll stay out of each other's way." "Of course," Emma replied dryly. "Very romantic marriage." The first few days were anything but smooth. Lucas lived by a strict schedule, waking up at 5 a.m., breakfast at 6, out the door by 7. Everything was quiet and precisely timed. Emma, on the other hand, often woke up late, walked barefoot into the kitchen, humming softly while she made coffee. One morning, just as she reached for the milk, a cold voice sliced through the air behind her. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma turned to see Lucas, sharply dressed in a tailored suit, brows furrowed. "Looking for breakfast," she replied, still holding a slice of bread. "You've rearranged everything in the fridge." "I just took out milk and bread," Emma said, bewildered. "Didn't know the milk had a fixed location." Lucas sighed, rubbing his forehead like he was dealing with something monumental. "I like everything in its place." Emma crossed her arms, a smirk forming on her lips. "Yes, Mr. Perfection. I'll try not to ruin your perfect little world." Lucas said nothing. He turned, poured his coffee, and walked away, leaving Emma shaking her head. She wasn't sure how long she could tolerate this, but one thing was certain: she wouldn't let Lucas Bennett control her life. 2 days later, Evelyn, Lucas's mother, arrived unannounced. She entered the penthouse like she was inspecting an investment property, her sharp eyes scanning every corner before settling on Emma. "Emma, you look absolutely radiant," she said with a smile, though Emma could feel the scrutiny behind it. Suddenly, Lucas wrapped an arm around Emma's waist. "Mom, Emma's an amazing wife." Emma stiffened. The warmth of his breath brushed her neck, sending her heart racing. For a brief second, this didn't feel like a performance. Something about it felt real. Emma didn't know what was changing, Lucas or herself. But with each passing day, things no longer felt like they did at the beginning. Lucas wasn't as cold as he used to be. He didn't scold her anymore when she left things on the table. When she accidentally knocked over a salt jar in the kitchen, he just shook his head and quietly cleaned it up. Once, when Emma got lost on her way to the grocery store, he didn't get angry. He simply sighed and drove over to pick her up, without a single complaint. These small gestures didn't go unnoticed. Emma didn't want to care, but her heart was slowly betraying her logic. That night, she came down with a fever. Her body ached, her throat burned, and her head spun. Lucas was the first to notice. He carried her to bed, placed a cold towel on her forehead, made her take medicine, and sat by her side, holding her hand through the night. When she woke up the next morning, Emma found Lucas asleep at the edge of her bed, his hand still wrapped around hers. Her heart clenched. This wasn't something a man pretending to be a husband would do. She began to see Lucas in a different light. Things became even clearer when they attended a charity gala hosted by Lucas's company. In the middle of the crowded event, a guest commented loudly, "You two make a lovely couple, but I've never seen you kiss your wife in public." Emma froze. Lucas was silent for a moment. Then, without warning, he turned to her and gently kissed her. At first, it seemed like a reaction, a move to keep up appearances. But as his lips met hers, time seemed to pause. The kiss wasn't rushed or showy. It was gentle, warm, and deeply sincere. Emma's heart raced. When Lucas finally pulled away, his eyes never left hers. The crowd around them erupted in applause, but Emma couldn't hear any of it. All she could hear was the wild rhythm of her own heartbeat and the undeniable feeling that had just entered her chest. This wasn't an act anymore. Emma had started to fear her own feelings. Ever since that kiss, she couldn't stop thinking about Lucas. He was no longer a stranger, no longer cold, no longer just a partner in a contract. He was attentive, gentle, and sometimes even made her laugh, something she hadn't done in so long. But that's what scared her. She feared she was falling for a man who couldn't fall back. That fear became real the night Vanessa showed up. It was a Friday evening. Emma was coming down the stairs when she heard a woman's voice echoing from the living room. As she got closer, she saw a stunning blonde woman, sharply dressed, standing across from Lucas. The air between them was thick with unresolved emotion. "You really got married?" Vanessa asked, her tone laced with mockery. "Lucas Bennett, the man who once said love was pointless, got himself a wife?" "That's none of your business," Lucas replied, his voice icy. "Oh, but I find it fascinating." Vanessa stepped forward, placing a hand on his chest. "Do you love her, or is this just another performance for your mother?" Emma froze on the staircase. The question echoed in her mind like a slap. She turned away before Lucas could see her. That night, she said nothing. In the days that followed, the distance between them grew. Emma avoided his gaze, skipped breakfast with him, stopped sharing little stories or asking about his day. Lucas noticed it, and he hated it. One evening, he walked into her study. She was packing her books into a box. "Emma," he said softly, "you're avoiding me." "I don't know what you're talking about." "It's since Vanessa came. Why?" Emma tightened her grip on the book in her hands. "Because she was right, wasn't she? I'm just part of this contract, a role, nothing more." Lucas froze. He opened his mouth, trying to speak, but no words came. Emma gave a sad smile. "You were never serious about me, and I was stupid enough to forget that." The next morning, when Lucas woke up, Emma was gone. On the dining table sat the fake wedding ring they once wore. The apartment had never felt so empty. No scent of coffee, no soft footsteps in the morning, only silence. And one undeniable truth: he had lost her. Lucas never imagined his apartment could ever feel this empty. No more soft footsteps in the morning, no more scent of Emma's freshly brewed coffee, no more little questions about yesterday, or that gentle shake of her head when he forgot to eat. All that remained was stillness and silence. And then the truth hit him like a crashing wave. He loved her, not because of the contract, not because of his mother, but because of Emma herself. Strong, honest, full of warmth. She was the only thing that ever made his cold world feel alive. He once thought he didn't need anyone, but now, every day without her felt unbearable. Lucas began searching for Emma. She had left no address, but a few weeks later he received a letter from her lawyer, a short final message. "I've left the city, please don't look for me." But he couldn't obey that. He stepped away from his work, put projects on hold. After 2 weeks of searching, he finally stood in front of a small apartment in a quiet coastal town where Emma was starting over, chasing her dream of becoming a writer. He knocked on the door. Emma opened it, wearing a loose sweater, her hair tied up, surprise and caution in her eyes. "Lucas," she whispered. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, as if trying to believe he was really seeing her again. "I don't care about the contract anymore," Lucas said, his voice low and steady. "You don't have to do this," Emma replied, her eyes already glistening. "We're not bound to anything now." "I know." He stepped closer and gently took her hand. "But I can't live without you." Emma went still. Her heart ached, but it still feared. "If I have to," Lucas continued, "I'll give up the company. I'll give up everything, as long as I have you." Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks. She didn't need any more words. She nodded. In that quiet moment, everything changed. There were no more doubts, no more contracts, only two hearts finally choosing each other, freely, truly. Weeks later, Lucas and Emma's wedding took place in the garden behind the Bennett estate, a space once quiet and still, now blooming with white flowers, soft sunlight, and gentle music. It wasn't a grand or crowded ceremony, but every moment was filled with sincerity. Emma stood in front of the mirror, hands slightly trembling as she adjusted her ivory wedding dress. It wasn't nerves, just emotion. She had never imagined that a marriage born from a contract could lead to this day. A soft knock came at the door. It was Evelyn. The woman who had entered her life with sharp eyes and calm presence had never shown open disapproval. From the very first meeting, Evelyn had smiled and called her radiant. But Emma had sensed the quiet scrutiny, the unspoken questions behind that polished composure. Today, that look had changed. Softer, warmer. "You truly look beautiful," Evelyn said gently, "and I believe Lucas changed because of you." Emma blinked, then smiled softly. "You know," Evelyn continued, "I always sensed something special about you from the beginning, but I needed time to be sure you were here for the right reasons. And you proved that, not with words, but with love." Emma felt her eyes sting. It wasn't an apology, but it was something far more valuable. It was acceptance, a gift no dowry could match. As the music played, Emma stepped into the garden. Lucas was waiting, no longer a man obsessed with control, but someone who looked at her as if she were his entire world. He held out his hand, full of trust. As they walked down the aisle together, Emma glanced back and saw Evelyn, smiling, her eyes soft with silent blessing. In that moment, Emma was no longer the contract wife. She was a daughter-in-law. She was family,